I saw the amount of brainwashing and how quickly it happened. And of course, it was a time when the United States establishment was shooting Black Panthers on the streets of Chicago and LA at an alarming rate, also in Newark. And I did have some connections. Brothers were sending me certain newspapers and things like this. So I was kind of up to date with what was happening as far as America. And then when they shot four college students, white college students in Ohio, at that point I said, like, wait, this government has gone crazy now. Like, I could rationalize why they're killing us, people of color, because we're trying to come up. We've been under oppression for generations, and they see us as a threat for sure. But now they're killing their own children because they're protesting against this war in Vietnam, and I'm training to go there and fight in this war now. I said something is like amiss here, something is wrong. So I started getting a lot of bad feelings about my position in the Marine Corps, and about having to go and actually fight for this country. Prior to my leaving university, we did have a visit by Muhammad Ali, who was doing a tour at the time because I guess he was banned from boxing. I remember he pulled up in a purple Cadillac. That was the biggest thing that I remember. But of course, he gave a speech about his, not wanting to go to the war and his stance. But I guess in spite of all of that, I still went, and I think that was just the pressure, the culture, and I was an American. I guess even to today, if I hear like the national anthem or a Pledge of Allegiance, like this indoctrination, started when I was really young. So there's still this. I have to make a conscious effort to say, these guys tricked you, and what they got you pledging allegiance to and singing the national anthem about is like it's folly. It's not real. So, but I was under influence. I was 18 years old, 19 years old. So I went to Marine Corps and realized I was making a mistake. I went to them and said, I don't think I'm cut out for this kind of duty. I think I want to leave the military. And they threatened to like arrest me and put me in jail and all that. So I said, well, that's not going to work rationally. So I waited for my opportunity to just leave. So I went on a pass one weekend, went to Washington, D.C. And in those days, if you have a military ID, you can get on any plane if they got room, and they'll fly you wherever you want to go. So I got on a plane, flew back to New York City, and went home. And when I went home, it was a big stir. Everybody, you better go back. They even brought up ex-Army general or colonel or whatever, karate guy I grew up with, to like, I guess, beat me up, make me go back home. But I said, yeah, if we want to fight, we're going to fight. Like, I've been through basic training, I've been through advanced infantry training, like, I can fight. But it's not going to make a difference. I'm not going back. So finally they just said, well, you're being a hardhead, you should go back. And I said, well, you guys don't know what I just went through. You guys don't know what I'm seeing. So I love you guys and all that, but I got to do what I have to do. And I was going to go to Trinidad because I had a girlfriend from New York. She was from Trinidad. So I said, Trinidad is pretty cool. So I'm going to go to Trinidad. It's nice and warm there. But I read an article saying there was a lot of people who had deserted and went to the mountains in Trinidad, and the Army had just made a big arrest. So I said, no, I better not go to Trinidad. They're too hot. And so Montreal came up in a magazine I was reading, and in the magazine I saw there was already one black guy there. So I said, well, if they guys are hip enough to have these kind of clubs in Montreal, and there's already a black guy there, maybe I should go to Montreal. And the next week, my neighbor's church was giving a bus ride to Montreal. So I said, well, this is a sign here. So I told them I want a ticket for the bus ride, but I'm not coming back. They said, you're not coming back? I said, yeah, keep it quiet, I'm not coming back though. So he said, okay. Like, we grew up together, everybody, all these guys in this close neighborhood, right? So they said, well, whatever you want to do, yeah. So we got to the border, and they took a kid and they put him underneath a blanket. So when immigration came, they counted the heads on the bus, 57, okay. Went, vacation in Montreal for about 2 weeks. Everybody else got back on the bus, going back to New Jersey. And I put my stuff on my back and I walked to McGill University. So I was in McGill University for about 3 or 4 weeks. Hey, I met a couple of guys there. It was nice, summertime. Montreal was really beautiful and all that, but I wasn't going anywhere. Nothing was happening for me. So finally, people said, "You should go to Toronto. You don't speak French. Like, it's going to be tough for you to make it here. Plus, your money is running out." So I went to Toronto, and Toronto had what was called the Toronto Anti-Draft Program. It was run by a girl named Naomi Wells and her partner. And they had a network of people who had immigrated to Canada from the United States due to the war, and now were established in Toronto and wanted to help out more people who were coming in. So they had places where you could stay, and they had ways of you making money legally. So I was a Fuller Brush guy. So I used to go around knocking on doors and selling Fuller Brush products for this guy who had the franchise. And I remember the first Grey Cup game. It was like a celebration. And I said, wow, maybe Canada's going to work. But then I was on Bathurst Street in Toronto, and the War Measures Act came down. And I had already been in the Newark riots. So my friend, we were living in a suburb, but we were there talking one night, and we decided to go back to our hometown in Newark to see what the riots looked like. I guess we got stopped about 50 times before we could make it through Newark and back out. And we saw the National Guard guys lined up guarding all the big stores, and the police and all the state troopers. They stopped us at every corner, had us get out and check out and say, because we knew the city better than them, we could tell a lie. We said, yeah, we coming from work, we trying to get here, so they couldn't say anything. But it was a terrifying experience to see the city where we grew up burning and now under siege. So when I was in Canada and they say, oh, it's now safe here and all that, and all of a sudden the War Measures Act came down and there were tanks on the streets of Toronto. So I was like, wow, this is like deja vu. It was like, but it was quickly over and everything went back to normal. And there was also this place called Rochdale on Bloor Street, where all these hippies were and all kind of stuff was going on. I used to always walk a couple blocks away from Rochdale because it was FBI was there. And they were arresting my uncle on a regular basis in New Jersey, coming to my house, knocking on the door, searching the house, and he happened to be in there helping my mother, you know, do her floors or whatever, and they kept arresting him, thinking he was me. So we always joked. When I came back, he said, "You owe me a lot, man, because I had to go to jail for you and all that." But of course, we got it was the first time in American history that we got the amnesty. So after 5 years of being on the FBI list, they declared amnesty for all of the 100,000 deserters and draft dodgers. First time in American history. And we returned to Fort Benjamin, Indiana, and got our discharges. Well, my name was always Abdul Rahman, like when I was in Toronto. So I added the name Abbas because of the tragedy of Karbala when I embraced Shia Islam. So, you know, I think this is the completion of the deen in a sense for me. So it's such a huge piece that had been missing and such an integral part of you know, the legacy of Ahlul Bayt that I sort of incorporated that name and the part that Abbas played in on that day. So, but you know, all of the Ahlul Bayt is extraordinarily special to me, and of course the Prophet, may peace be upon him, is the main guy. So I haven't, no. Well, I was in Syria, so I did go to Bibi Zainab's mausoleum, and so we were there en route to Hajj. So we were there, so that's the only one. I haven't been to Iraq or Iran yet. We were staying at a 5-star hotel, so this was like a big deal. But you know, the entrance to the shrine and going to the shrine clearly outweighed any of the glamour of the 5-star hotel. So I guess that's what really sort of was striking about it. Also the fact that in Syria we also went to the tomb of Bilal. I remember that pretty distinctly. Well, just the reverence that everyone was paying to baby Zainab, and of course, again, tying in the story of the tragedy of Karbala and the part she played as far as Islam. That was huge. And of course, I felt very fortunate because, you know, I could look back and say, well, if I wasn't exposed to the Ahlul Bayt, I could have easily gone to Syria and, you know, have no knowledge whatsoever of Zainab's life or story or anything. So I felt very fortunate that at least I went to Syria at a time that I was aware of the Ahlul Bayt and her presence and her importance. I don't think there's any comparison to any sort of struggles that we have that compares to the sacrifice of Imam Hussein on the plains of Karbala. I think this is the epitome of sacrifice, and so I think the relation to the great sacrifice of the Prophet Abraham and how this was suspended and put in place for it to be Imam Hussein, I think that was really a key thing. So again, I felt very fortunate that after such a long time feeling like I was educated in Islam and the Deen, that these important pieces were now, I was at least aware of them. So I felt fortunate that I was no longer in the dark about Imam Hussein and his sacrifice and all that entailed. Yes, my wife and I, we both work in the healthcare field. We both she's a nurse, and I'm a youth and family counselor. So we actually met on, we work with kids in psychiatric and psychological crisis. We met in Toronto working together in this field. So when we came out here, she actually embraced Islam while she was here. So she's a very new Muslim compared to my experience. So one of the highlights, I guess, of our time here was a time when I had retired from my job at Children's Hospital and was just working sort of casually. So we took the opportunity to come to the school and work with the teachers and the students here at the school. So I was basically working for her. She was more or less the spearhead of it. And we called our little union Hearts First, because we were dealing with the transformation of child development, that we should be looking towards enriching the child, trying to increase his generosity, trying to get away from coercion. If you don't do this, we're going to do that. These things now have been scientifically proven are not the best way to raise children and for their development. So we're trying to introduce a lot of that into the environment here, into the school. And as counselors also, though we were dealing at Children's Hospital with a lot more serious sort of issues, we were in tune to child development and able to detect certain things out of children's behavior. So it was quite a rewarding and interesting time that we spent here. Unfortunately, she had contracted breast cancer 10 years previously, and the cancer returned. She was in remission for about 10 years and cancer returned, so it metastasized. So she became quite ill again, so we had to stop, and she's been under treatment ever since. The good news is that through all the prayers, because she got to be quite well known rather quickly, but through the prayers of all of the Muslims here in the community, and of course the brothers in Toronto and Ottawa that we know who knew her and knew of the situations, like the du'as were pouring in all over. And alhamdulillah, she had an emergency in August, where she was quite ill and fought off 2 infections. And the doctor changed her medication when she came out of the hospital. And from that time to now, it's been steady improvement. So though she's not fully recovered, she doesn't have her full energy, she was able to make it to the journey of Islam this year, which was a great thing for her because she got to see a lot of the kids that she had been working with was asking, "Oh, do you remember me?" And so